Marine invertebrates around the world. Hi, everybody!
Welcome to
Wild Animal Wednesday.
I'm Mrs. Laura,
And I'm Alexis.
and today we're going to start another section of our marine invertebrates around the world with tide pool invertebrates. And we're super excited because we actually were able to explore and observe a lot of these tide pool invertebrates while we were on the Pacific coast last summer. So we're really excited to share the information that we've gathered and some of the videos and pictures too that we took.
Now we just need to see my sea urchin, and there's a starfish right over there.
That's so cool.
Watch where you're stepping.
I will. I'll be really careful.
Is it a starfish or is it a sea star?
Sea star is the correct pronunciation. They are not fish. They don't have a tail or scales. That's that.
Exactly. When I was a child, we always referred to them as starfish. But now they're getting a little smarter and realizing we can't refer to them as starfish because then people think they're fish. They are sea stars because they are invertebrates. They're a specific kind of invertebrate called an echinoderm.
Echinoderm.
So sea stars are echinoderms. What are some other echinoderms?
Sea stars, sea urchins, and sand dollars.
Very cool creatures. And one thing that's significant about the echinoderms is they have this beautiful 5-part symmetry. Now the starfish has 5 arms, or at least most of them do, right?
Yeah, some, like the sunflower sea star, can have up to 40. And the 9-armed sea star, also known as thin sea star, that is in Florida, has 9 arms.
That's really cool. So some do have a few more, but most have 5. Now their arms are very unique. What happens if a predator snatches one of those arms?
Well, like the octopus, it will let go its arm and grow a new one.
So it's a perfect escape plan for those predators, isn't it? So under each of those 5 or more arms on these sea stars are little tube feet. Hundreds of little tube feet. On the tip of each of these arms, also called a ray, is an
Red eye.
is an eye. Now there are about 2,000 different kinds of sea stars. That's a lot of sea stars, isn't it? But what is the smallest sea star?
The smallest sea star is the paddle spine sea star. It is this small.
It's less than half an inch. So tiny. What is the largest sea star?
The sunflower sea star.
So let's talk about what the sea star eats. What does the sea star eat?
Well, sea stars are carnivores, and they will eat sea urchins, sea cucumbers, and mussels and clams. They really like the bivalves.
They do seem like they like the bivalves, don't they?
Ochre sea stars move very slowly. They may not seem dangerous, but sea stars are serious predators. Barnacles, mussels, and clams live in tide pools. Ochre sea stars are built to prey upon these tide pool invertebrates.
So as we mentioned, the sea stars have those tube feet with the tiny suction cups. They use these to grip the prey shell, and then they pull the shells apart.
But something crazy happens. When the sea star eats, its stomach will come out of its body and eat the creature.
Isn't that crazy? So instead of putting the creature inside its mouth and its stomach, it blobs out in its stomach. That's a very interesting fact, isn't it?
Very interesting.
Then after it digests its food, it'll put its stomach right back into its body. So what eats the sea star?
Well, egrets, gulls, herons, raccoons, river otters, and sea otters.
So the sea stars are a part of this perfect little circle of life in the tide pools, both acting as a predator and prey. Now let's talk about my favorite part of any creature, and that is the babies! So the female sea sea stars can actually lay millions of eggs at one time. That's a lot. Well, once these babies hatch, the larva will float up to the surface with all the other plankton in the ocean.
And get eaten by whales!
The larva starts off looking just like a blob, but in about 3 weeks, then you'll start to see more of a starfish shape. But they are born with that symmetry, that 5-point symmetry. They start off transparent in color, but as they grow, they'll start building up their color, they'll start getting heavier, and they'll start to sink down to the ocean floor. That sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah!
What other creature does that?
The octopus! They're very similar.
Then after they sink down to the ocean floor, and some will end up in tide pools, they can live for about 35 years. That's a long time. Now, some sea stars can even break in two and turn into 2 starfish. Isn't that crazy?
The sailors that didn't like the starfish would actually chop them up and put them in the ocean.
Oh, that's right.
And they would just keep growing and growing and growing and growing.
Right.
Didn't help.
We read about that there were fishermen that they didn't like these starfish that kept getting caught in their nets. And so they would chop them up and throw them back in the ocean. Only to find out later that all those little chopped pieces grew into a whole nother starfish or sea star. Now, sea stars will live in every ocean in the world. The temperate, the warm, the cool, the cold. Truly a marine invertebrate all around the world because you can find it all around the world. Very cool.
Now that we learned about the sea star, let's draw it!
All right, let's do it.
Let's draw!
I'm going to draw the ochre sea star because that is when we really had a lot of experience being able to see it in person and really observe these amazing sea stars. What kind are you going to draw?
I'm going to draw a bat sea star.
Ooh, nice one. So ours will be very different in their shapes, although they will both have the 5 arms. I'm going to start with my sea star's 5 arms. Now, most sea stars do have 5 arms, but they don't all have 5 arms, do they?
Like the sun sea star that I'm going to be drawing as well.
Now that I have all 5 arms drawn, I'm going to draw a few more of the details. So on the tip of each arm, or they're also called ray, there's an eye at the end. Now this eye does not see like our eyes do. It only senses light and dark. Ochre sea stars also have these little tiny pincers all over the top of the body and all over the sides as well.
I'm going to start drawing the pincers at the sea star's central disc, which, as the name implies, is in the center of the sea star. It's where all the arms meet. On the underside of this central disc is where the sea star's mouth and stomach are located.
So I'm going to start with the central disc with all these little pincers. They're all over the sea star's body, all over the top, and they're all over the sides. And they will actually act as protection. They'll also kind of scrape some algae and keep parasites off of this starfish, or the sea star, I should say. I know they were always starfish when I was a kid.
These tiny pincers on the sea star are also used to keep debris from collecting on their skin and thus weighing them down. They have no hands to pick off that piece of seaweed that might land on them.
To speed up the process of drawing all of these little pincers all over the edges of my sea star, I'm going to just kind of make little bumps along the edge here.
As you can see, drawing all these tiny pincers all around the sea star is quite time consuming. So I'm going to speed this up a little bit, but if you need to, go ahead and pause the video and catch up.
Now that I have the pincers all along the edges of my starfish, I'm also going to draw pincers kind of all over the starfish body as well. I'm also going to draw the underside of my ochre sea star, but not the full sea star, just part of it. So I'm just going to draw maybe a couple arms here. So I'm only drawing 2 arms of my ochre sea star. And in fact, we saw a couple that only had 2 or 3 arms because the ochre sea stars are being affected by what's called the sea star wasting disease, in which they are all kind of turning into a goo and their arms or their rays are falling off. It's very quite sad. So in the center of the underneath of the sea star is its mouth. And one really cool thing about the ochre sea star and many other sea stars is that they will actually put their stomach outside of their body and insert it into the mussel or whatever other creature they're going to eat, and they'll digest it and then put that stomach right back into their mouth. So that's one really cool feature on the underside of the sea star. Another really cool feature is all of those tube feet. Those are really fun. So there are these little slits kind of on the underside where all the tube feet are. And I'm going to draw the little eyes at the ends again. So there's the eyes. Now their tube feet are not always out. Sometimes their tube feet are tucked inside of the sea star. So I'm only going to draw a few just to represent that there are tube feet, because there are hundreds of tube feet. I'm not going to sit here and draw several hundred, but I'll at least give you a little idea. So echinoderms are the only creature, the only invertebrate that has these tube feet. I'm just going to erase a little bit of the line so you can't see that through the tube feet. So this side is going to have all the little tube feet are going to be tucked inside. So I'm just going to draw a few little circles to represent that the tube feet are tucked inside this arm of the sea star. So the echinoderms will actually stretch out these tube feet, and how they do that is they fill them up with water to make their tube feet kind of stretch out, and so they can walk around. And then when they want them to go back inside, they'll actually squeeze all the water out of their tube feet, and it makes them shorter again and they can tuck back inside. Isn't that a fun fact? All right, I'm going to go ahead and speed up this part of the drawing because again, this is a little time consuming. So if you also need more time to draw all of your little tube feet, you can go ahead and pause for a little bit so you can catch up, because these tube feet do take a long time between the pincers on the front and the tube feet underneath. There is a lot going on. So there's all the tucked in short tube feet. I'll draw a few more of these stretched out longer tube feet.
Now it's time to label our sea star. There is one more significant feature that I'd like to share. There is an interesting looking mole-like blob on the top of the sea star called a madreporite. On the ochre sea star, it's actually an orange color. The madrepore allows the seawater to enter into the sea star. Let's label that madreporite now. It starts off looking and sounding like mad.
And Alexis was actually the first to observe on the ochre sea star. It's orange. And she noticed that little orange mole-looking spot and was able to ask the ranger about it. Turns out, yes, that is where the seawater can get into the sea star. As the sea star does not have blood, it only has seawater inside of it, and that's where it can go inside its body to keep it moist. A sea star can only stay out of water for about 50 hours. So this helps when the water does come and the tide comes back in to replenish that sea star with the seawater inside. And let's go ahead and label all of these pincers. We have quite a few here as well as on the back of the sea star. These are pincers.
At the tip of each arm or ray is an eye or eye spot. They don't see like our eyes do. They only sense the light in the dark.
We also have the arms or the rays. Five of those. And then, oh, here's the central disc. We're going to go ahead and label that as well. There's the central disc. And on the underside of my sea star, we have those tube feet. So cool. As I said, the only creatures that have tube feet are the echinoderms, which include the sea stars, sea urchins, sea cucumbers, and sand dollars. So I'm going to go ahead and label that those are also, I just want to say tube feet, not tube foot. There are lots of tube feet, not just one tube foot. And I'll go ahead and label the eye again, because those are also visible on the underside of the sea star. And then down here, we've got some cool stuff going on. We have the mouth. And we have this stomach hanging out, ready to chow down on a mussel. Let's color! Drawing with us, everyone. We used a lot of books to learn about these amazing echinoderms. We checked all these books out at our local library. For a list of these books, please check out our description.
Stay tuned for more tide pool invertebrates.
Yeah, I'm excited to share them.
Bye. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Wild Animal Wednesday.
I'm Mrs. Laura.
And I'm Alexis Tito.
Today, we are going to start.
Alexis Tito.
We were able to explore a lot of these tide pool invertebrates while we were on the... Okay, starfish having the 5 arms. The sea urchin will have actually 5. So the starfish has the 5 arms. The sand dollar has like a 5 petaled flower. Okay, let me try that.
The cucumber has some too.
Now the starfish has 5 stars, or at least not 5 stars. The
No,
tide
you
pool
ask
predators.
me and then I'll eat.
Okay,
Eat.
then you'll eat. Period.
Now let's draw this beautiful sea star.
Ooh, let's do it.
Oh! Gang, 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 gang. dog. Bye!